Bungie nerfed the Bonk Titan horribly, but it's still very good if you do it right. In today's video, we're going to give you a breakdown of Bonk build in Season 23. The gameplay behind me here you can see is of me using this build and just how effective and efficient it is at clearing lost sectors and challenging endgame activities. The key to this build now is that previously what we would do is just throw a baby hammer into the enemy's face over and over and over again, of course making sure that we had Roaring Flames ×3, and it just did incredible damage and you had no cooldown on the baby hammer at all. You could clear raid bosses, dungeon bosses, everything effectively and efficiently with the Bonk build in previous seasons. And now in Season 23, the new adaptation that we're going to use is throw the Bonk hammer and then pick it up because it's going to bounce right back in your face. And it has a 1.4 second cooldown. And what you're going to do in those 1.4 seconds is shoot a 1-2 punch shotgun and then hit an uncharged melee. That will be the exact perfect amount of time it takes to then recharge that baby hammer, and then you'll throw it again. So it was baby hammer, baby hammer, baby hammer in the past. Now it's baby hammer, 1-2 punch, and a melee, baby hammer. That's all you're doing is just adding this into the gameplay loop that you're using here, and it's still extremely effective. In fact, it might be just as effective as it was before, as long as you get the sequence down. Let's do a breakdown of the exact build that we're using and all the mods. We have changed some of the fragments because obviously we have a ton of really good artifact mods that help us with solar ignitions, and so we want to lean into that a little bit in Season 23. So for the super, first up, we are going to use Hammer of Soul. This is going to be the best option, so make sure to pick that, and the fragment that we pick with this will actually match really well, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Definitely choose the tall wall because this offers you some survivability. You can block off the line of sight, so that way enemies can't shoot you from a direction for a short period of time. Catapult lift is definitely the way to go. Don't use high jump. I swear every Titan, every blueberry I ever inspect is using high jump on their Titan. Don't do it. And then of course you have to use throwing hammer. There is the option for hammer strike. Never use that. I guess I shouldn't say never use that. Maybe Peregrine Greaves you could use that, but for the most part we're using Bonk, and we want to use the Bonk build here. We're using throwing hammer. Healing nade is going to be a necessity for this. This is going to give you a get out of jail free card. If you're getting low health, you can throw this at your feet, so it'll be really nice. Also healing your teammates as well. The aspects are the same as before. We got Roaring Flames, which is going to be final blows with solar abilities or ignitions, increase the damage of those solar abilities. And this is the really important part, is that the first time you go into action when you're trying to kill the red bar enemies, previously what you would do is just throw a baby hammer, hit one, and then go on until you got ×3 stacks. It's very important to do it in this exact sequence now. You need to throw the baby hammer first, you'll get Roaring Flames ×1, and then you can just use your uncharged melee to get ×2 and ×3, or you can throw baby hammers in the sequence, but start with baby hammer and then use uncharged melees to then get up to ×3. It's very important. That's what gives us those really powerful Bonk hits. And then Soul Invictus, of course, is giving us those sunspots, which are just super powerful. They're going to keep you alive. Your abilities regenerate faster. Your super drains slower. And sunspots apply scorch and deal damage to targets inside of them, and giving you restoration, so keep that in mind. So if you ever see a sunspot on the ground, definitely go stand in it, whether you're in your super or not. It's definitely in the play. So those are the two aspects we're going with. For the fragments, it's very important to use Ember of Torches, and the reason why is because this is going to tie into the artifact mod, and we have powered melee attacks against combatants, make you and nearby allies radiant. So you're going to throw your baby hammer, you're going to bonk something, right? That's going to immediately give you radiant, which is going to tie absolutely perfectly to your class item, which with Rays of Precision here. While radiant, solar precision final blows cause combatants to ignite. So you're going to cause a ton of ignitions with your weapons, whether it's the sunshot, really it can be any weapon actually. It could be a sniper, it could be a machine gun, anything that can hit a precision hit. Of course, not everything can hit precision hits, like fusion rifles, for example, can't. The Vex Mythic class is a fusion that can, though. It's maybe one of the only exceptions, but as long as you hit a precision hit, precision final blow on that enemy, it's going to cause an ignition, which is going to be really nice and ties in perfectly with this build, especially because we have infinite radiant due to always having a baby hammer. As long as we have the Bonk there ready to go, we're going to always have radiant. So that's really nice gameplay loop there. The next part we're going to go over is Ember of Empyrean, which is going to be your solar weapon or ability final blows, extend the duration of restoration and radiant. So when we get restoration, we can extend it by getting more Bonk kills with the hammer, or we can use our sunshot, which is what I'm using in the gameplay here. Using sunshot will extend the restoration and the radiant effects, which is very nice. Restoration keeping you alive, radiant making it so that you do 10% more damage, and also making it again so that you ignite every enemy that gets killed by a precision hit. This is perfect. This is the exact gameplay loop we want. This is great synergy here. The next one is a little bit different though. This has nothing to do with what we've been working on. This is just Ember of Combustion. Your solar super will cause targets to ignite and create a fire sprite. This just makes your solar super amazing. Everything you hit with your super causes massive ignitions. It'll allow you to completely clear a room of ads in absolutely no time. I always recommend this one just because if you're going to use Solar Titan, you're going to pop your super from time to time, especially because of the mods we have on our armor that we're going to get to in just a moment. And when you throw that hammer, you're going to want to clear the room of all of the ads. And that's why we're also going to use Hammer of Soul, because that's where the synergy comes in. The super ties in the best with using Ember of Combustion. So use those two together in combination and you will really really enjoy Bonk build in Season 23. And then the last one is going to be Ember of Eruption, which is your solar ignitions have increased area of effect. First, we get Radiant by throwing the baby hammer, and then we get a solar precision kill. And getting a solar precision kill is going to cause an ignition, and then tying that back into Ember of Eruption equals even bigger ignitions, completely clearing the room, and is really, really effective. And that's why we're going to want to use Eruption for Season 23 for our Bonk builds. Now, going through the weapons, you can use any weapons you want. I do recommend using Sunshot this season. It's very, very powerful. Obviously, it works really well with the artifact mods, and is just one of the best weapons in general. But don't feel like you have to be locked into Sunshot. I know that a lot of my builds and a lot of my gameplay involves me using Sunshot, but anytime I want to use a different exotic, for example, in the kinetic or in the power slot, then I'll just use my Azali's Bane. It works just as good for me personally. Now, as far as the special ammo weapon though, you will want to use a 1-2 punch shotgun if you're going to be using the Bonk build in Season 23, because again, throw baby hammer and then 1-2 punch shotgun, uncharged melee, and then throw baby hammer. This is going to make your uncharged melee much more powerful. Keep in mind though that 1-2 punch does not buff the damage output of your baby hammer. So you're not going to 1-2 punch and then throw a baby hammer. That would be counterintuitive and unhelpful to what you're trying to do. Lastly, your power weapon doesn't matter. It could be anything. A machine gun will be very effective for getting a ton of ignitions though if you really want. So keep that in mind. Onto the armor pieces. For the helmet for this build, we're definitely going to use hands-on. This will allow you to get a ton of super energy for every bonk kill that you get. And then secondly, we're going to use Harmonic Siphon, which is going to be rapid solar weapon final blows, create an orb of power. This will be very helpful and very advantageous because we're going to be using Sunshot, clearing enemies and stuff like that. You could use whatever siphon though you have. Like for example, if you have a Void machine gun on, you can use Void Siphon. And then lastly, I just use Heavy Ammo Finder. This doesn't tie into the build at all. I just find it to be very helpful to get more heavy ammo breaks to drop for me. Moving on to the gauntlet now. For the gauntlet, I am definitely going to use Heavy Handed, which is going to be your powered melee final blows, creating orbs of power. Obviously, this is really, really strong when using Bonk. You're going to be throwing that hammer a ton, killing a ton of different things, and it creates a ton of orbs, which is going to tie into survivability with the boot mod that we'll get to in just a moment. Second mod I have on is Solar Loader, which obviously I like to reload the Sunshot really fast, and then if I swap to Azali's Bane, that will also reload really fast, so that works perfectly with this loadout. And the last one is going to be Impact Induction, causing damage with your powered melee, reduces your grenade cooldown. This will just give you even more healing nades. That's going to make this build really, really powerful for survivability. We'll just have a ton of grenades all the time and a ton of orbs. Let's move on to the chest piece. Melee damage resistance is going to be the most important one because we're in the face of every enemy, constantly punching it. The other two resists can be whatever you need for that activity. Now we're on to the boots. This is one of the most important mods here. We got recuperation. This is always good. This is such good survivability. You always want to be creating orbs, and when you create those orbs, you go pick them up, replenishes your health. Recuperation is a must-have mod. Then the last two mods we have on are just going to be surges, just to make our weapons a little more powerful. 2 solar weapon surges makes the Sunshot just ridiculously powerful. Not to mention that this also stacks on top of Radiant, which is a plus 10%. So keep that in mind that with 2 weapon surges, we get the 15%, and then the additional plus 10% from Radiant. This makes your Sunshot just so ridiculously good. One-shotting all the red bar enemies, melting majors. It does it all when it comes to clearing rooms and clearing ads. So we use double solar weapon surge for the Sunshot to make it even more powerful. And then lastly, we're on to the class item. For the class item, I do use Time Dilation, Proximity Ward, and 1-2 Finisher. Now the reason why I use 1-2 Finisher is because if I do ever lose that baby hammer, occasionally you'll throw it off the map. What you can do is hit a finisher on an enemy, and in doing so, you'll then get your baby hammer back. So that's why I like that one. If you're like me, occasionally you make a mistake and you just lose the baby hammer, or you throw it and you die, and for whatever reason, then when you respawn, it blows up, right? Keep that in mind. That does happen from time to time. So 1-2 Finisher kind of saves you from losing that and getting it back a little bit faster, because when you invest everything into the Bonk build, when you lose that baby hammer, you lose everything. You got to get it back as soon as possible, and that's why we want to use this. Proximity Ward is definitely not necessary, and we're not trying to finish enemies like we're doing with our Strand Titan builds as much. But with this build, we definitely want to get the Bonk kill, because that will actually extend our Roaring Flames. It'll get us up to ×3 and refresh that timer. So you really don't want to finish too many enemies, but occasionally I do finish them just because they're tediously like right in front of my face, or maybe my health is getting low, and the Proximity Ward Overshield is always really nice. And then lastly, Time Dilation is just going to extend the duration of armor charge, so that way my Sunshot is doing that really, really high damage for a little bit longer due to the solar weapon surges. So that's it for all the armor mods. In terms of stats, we have 100 resilience, 100 discipline, and then it doesn't really matter after that. You definitely can lean into a little more recovery if you want, but you don't need any strength at all, because obviously you just get your hammer back immediately after you pick it up. Moving into the artifact, we're going to go through all the different solar build mods for Season 23. Of course, Rays of Precision, this is going to be the best one, while Radiant, Solar Precision Final Blows, cause combatants to ignite. This one is really, really nice. Sunshot obviously is going to ignite a ton of different things, and we're always going to have Radiant. This feels really, really good in Season 23. It honestly kind of makes the solar builds like the best choice in Season 23 because of mods like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be a solar subclass. Keep that in mind, that you can get Radiant other ways with other builds and and other loadouts, like using Flint Striker, for example, which we're also going to have on here, that can give you Radiant with rapid solar weapon hits and rapid solar weapon final blows. So all you have to do is just use a solar weapon and you can get Radiant, and then you can get Rays of Precision. So there's perfect synergy there if you don't want to use a solar build. Keep that in mind. And then the next part is Revitalizing Blast, causing damage with a solar ability, weakens champions and bosses for a short duration. All you have to do is just bonk the champion, and then they're going to get debuffed. A 15% debuff, which is going to be very powerful and make it much easier to clear those champions. Next spot is going to be Heart of Flame, casting your solar super, grants nearby allies Radiant, and increases the damage of your super for each nearby ally. This one is going to be really, really strong this season. You're going to pop your hammer, and nearby allies are going to make your hammers even stronger, which is amazing. And on top of that, you give them all Radiant, which means that they will get Rays of Precision if they're not using a solar class, and they'll cause tons of ignitions if they have that on. And then the last mod that ties into a solar build this season is Kindling Trigger. Radiant causes solar weapons to apply Scorch to unscorched combatants. So this is going to be Sunshot, for example, with me, and I'm going to have Radiant on, and then I'm going to be using the solar weapon, and then we're going to be adding Scorch to some of those combatants. So basically it allows you to potentially cause more ignitions on top of everything else, which is really nice and really powerful. And it kind of ties in with Flint Striker and Rays of Precision all together, making the build extremely lethal and extremely fun for Season 23. Let me know your thoughts on the Bonk build in Season 23. Click on the screen here to watch another video from the channel if you enjoyed. And if you're feeling thirsty out there, make sure to use code LUCKY10P to save some money on G Fuel. Also, make sure you're following me on Twitch and Kick. I go live all the time playing Destiny 2. Lastly, make sure you're following me on X, Instagram, and TikTok, where I deliver Destiny 2 news to you daily. I appreciate all the followers out there.